Hi everyone, my name is Annie and I'm here with Vivek Viswanathan, candidate for California Treasurer, and we are live from Bakersfield. We're so thrilled you could join us for our first Facebook Live Town Hall. Vivek, you just ran 372 miles so far, right?
That's right. We started at the state treasurer's office about a month ago in Sacramento with the idea of bringing this campaign for the state treasurer's office to people all across California, including in cities and towns where statewide candidates don't always go as often as they should. So we started there, made our way to Elk Grove, to Stockton, to Modesto, to Madera, Merced, Fresno, Tulare, and now we're down here in Bakersfield and getting ready to cross the Tehachapi Mountains.
And I'm sure you're glad we could take a break to finally rest and also take some questions from everyone. So
Exactly.
Let's start. I've got some questions that have already come in from viewers. And so the first question is from Rita from Modesto. What can you do to help schools in lower income areas get the funds needed to provide the same quality education that those in wealthier neighborhoods receive?
That's a really good question because right now, as we all know, the achievement gap between different communities is still much too large. And so one of the things we need to do, and before I started on this campaign, was working in the governor's office for the last year. And Governor Brown has been focused on this issue, including through the LCFF, that stands for Local Control Funding Formula, to make sure that people in low income and middle income communities get the funds that they need. So the first thing that I'd want to do, both in the treasurer's office and also as a statewide official weighing in on the important issues all across the state, is to make sure those funds not only continue to flow to those communities, but to make sure that there's transparency in terms of how they're used and they're actually showing up in the classroom. So I think that's really important. The next treasurer will also have to issue several billions of dollars in school construction bonds to make sure that we maintain our elementary, middle, and high schools. And we want to make sure the treasurer will do the technical exercise of issuing those bonds, but also can help push the state to make sure that those funds go to all communities and not just those that are often well placed to access those funds. The second thing that we can do is, in addition, making sure that the debt loads that we've heard about in some of these schools, we find ways to reduce them. And that could be working with the state legislature, working with the next governor to make sure that they do not suffer under the weight of that debt and make sure that they have the funds to get them in the classroom. I think that's so important. And one other thing that I'll say is we just simply need to put more money into our schools. It's not the only part of the solution. There are other things we can do to make sure that our schools and kids and parents can succeed, but it's a big part of it. So part of what I'm doing in this campaign is thinking about ways not only to make sure that we're fiscally strong right now, but we find ways to identify new revenue, both at the local and at the state level, and push that into our schools. Make sure we're paying our teachers well, making sure that schools, every kid has a good teacher in the school, and we can make sure that everyone gets what they need.
And Vivek, we get this question a lot, but what does the treasurer even do?
So that's a good question. And it's something that I've heard often when I'm on the road. They say, you seem like you would be great for this position, even though I'm not really sure what it is. So the treasurer, it's a really important job. First of all, as I was mentioning, you issue the state's bonds, which is several billions of dollars every year. You also invest the state's assets, basically the state's short-term checking account, as well as billions of dollars of local funds. So that comes out to about $70 billion a year. And you serve on a number of really important boards. So you chair the state's 529 College Savings Account Board, which is ScholarShare. You sit on retirement boards, CalPERS and CalSTRS. And then you also sit on a number of other really important boards for marketing the state's bonds, clean tech, manufacturing. It's really important. And in addition to that, you can also sponsor bills and push bills that matter in the legislature, and you have a platform to weigh in on the economic future of the state. The fact is that the treasurer, by virtue of issuing the state's bonds, is most sensitive to any changes in the state's credit rating. And that really reflects our long-term fiscal outlook. So the treasurer needs to play a key role in making sure that people are ready for the jobs of the future, so that our bondholders know that this is not only the sixth biggest economy in the world, but one to bet on in the future that we'll see.
Right. And especially with California being so big, it really has nationwide repercussions as well, right?
Exactly. That's right. Yeah, we've got an economy of about $2.5 trillion in GDP. So it's bigger than France, bigger than Italy, bigger than Russia, closing in on England.
Yeah. Post Brexit. So second question. From Audio in Richmond, why are you doing this run and is it painful?
Well, on the first part of that, I had this idea, I thought if you're going to run for office statewide, you might as well just run statewide. And that means running all across the state. I don't think a lot of people think like that, but okay. I think another part of it is, some of the advice I'd gotten initially when I was thinking about this, they said, hey, this is an uphill race. You need to raise millions and millions and millions of dollars. And of course, any candidate has to raise the funds to get their message out. So I've spent the time doing that.
Yeah.
But I thought there has to be more than that. There has to be more than going to corporations and political action committees with business before the state and trying to get their money. Because the fact is, a lot of those groups, they don't do what they do for charity. And I think there is a sense in California and all across the country that our elected officials often are not sufficiently responsive to people's actual concerns. So I thought, what better way than to actually bring this office to the people by stopping in every community all across the way? And I thought, let me just start running. And that's why I started in Sacramento and I took off. And it has been an amazing experience. It has been painful. I pulled a muscle on the second day. So we
kept that from everyone because we didn't want you to be worried. But we were a little worried about
some of that running turned into walking. I think I had some long days. Luckily, it helped that it was raining. So I thought, let me just hold my umbrella and start walking. Make sure to get good socks. Carry a lot of fluids to avoid, drink a lot of fluids, and make sure to avoid those blisters out there. And it's starting to get hot out here in the Central Valley, but I think we timed it well with March and April so that we can finish over the next month and then close strong to make sure to get to Election Day in June.
A follow-up question from Hannah in Davis. How many burritos are needed to power your run across California?
That's a good question. If we added all of them up, that probably wouldn't be good information for anybody to know. But let's just say a burrito is definitely a meal of choice, especially in the middle of the day. Sometimes, I think initially we had anticipated 10 to 15.
You eat a lot of pizza too, though.
I do eat a lot of pizza, yes. I drink a lot of Gatorade. I eat a lot of pizza. Every once in a while, we'll give myself a candy bar for a treat. Although, as my mom reminds me, have to get a lot of salad, have to get a lot of lentils, and most of all, drink a lot of water.
And it's hard because we're Facebook living we have a video blog every day. And so people actually know what you're eating and your mom can actually check in on you.
Exactly. It's true. But yeah, and make sure, and the good thing is in a lot of these towns, you can stop for lunch and you can talk about the people who you're buying food from, about where you are, what are the places to see, and what to really know about that town.
So we also have a question about tuition-free community college. How do you think tuition-free community colleges will increase enrollment for low-income communities? And how can you ensure that students of middle and upper classes will not fill out a disproportionate amount of spots in those free colleges?
So that's a really important question because we've anticipated just for four-year graduates a gap of over 1 million students or graduates in California over the next decade. And that's even more acute when you think about the associate's degrees that we need for the skills of the future. So it's a really important question. So the first thing is for low-income students, oftentimes there's so many barriers that they face in terms of getting good guidance at school, in terms of getting the support that they need, that they don't even know the resources that are out there, right? So they might see the sticker price on a community college and not know that financial aid is available for them to make it tuition free. So I think number one, that's a big part of it, showing that when it's free for everybody and you're not going to place a big tuition burden on your family when you go. The second thing is that aid that flows directly to those students is really important because as we know, on average at public institutions, living expenses are often more than the price of tuition. And that's especially true, unfortunately, in a state like California, where we have housing prices that are double the national average. So reducing that burden in any way makes a big difference. And then the third and maybe most important thing we have to do in the years to come is increase the capacity of these schools. And we do that in two ways. Number one, actually building out more. And we talked about those billions of dollars in bonds that'll go for both quick K-12, but also community college in terms of increasing capacity. The second thing is increasing graduation rates, which right now for four-year colleges across America is less than 60%. Over 6 years. So the more you push that number up, not only are you helping people get through school easier with less debt, but that opens up more spots for the next generation. And then you can have low-income people, you can have middle-income people like Summer, who we met in Manteca, and who's benefiting from the middle-class scholarship program, and we can make sure to do that all across the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our next question is from Isaac in San Francisco. You have a great platform, but there's been a lot of resistance in California about changing housing laws. How will you push for your platform, even in the face of serious resistance?
So the good thing about this is housing is an issue that is really on the agenda this year, which it hasn't been in years past. And it's something that people of our generation think a lot because, we live here,
Right.
we want to build our futures here. And when we see housing prices skyrocketing, we wonder what we're going to do about it. But several candidates running for governor have committed to building over 3 million new housing units over the next decade. So that's a big part of it. Last year, Governor Brown, who I worked for, signed a big housing package that did a number of things, putting in hundreds of millions of dollars for affordable housing, making it easier to streamline housing building when counties and other localities aren't meeting their housing goals, and putting a $3 billion housing bond on the ballot this fall. So that's just a start. There's so much more we need to do. I know right now there's a lot of discussion about how can we make sure we build more in transit zones and increase capacity there while making sure that we're not displacing people who are already living there, but making sure they have even more opportunities. So that's a really important conversation. The treasurer has to be part of that discussion. And in particular, the treasurer plays a big role in awarding housing tax credits that come from the federal government and making sure that those get to people where they're actually building affordable units.
Great. Next question is from Ben. You mentioned clean tech earlier. Can you say more about what the Treasury can do and what you would do to ensure California keeps innovating on clean tech and climate change issues?
That's a good one, and there's multiple different levers here, so I'm going to keep this short, but I get very excited when I hear about some of these things. So the first is directly, the treasurer has a role in overseeing several financing vehicles that make it easier for clean tech and energy efficiency for businesses and manufacturers all across the state. So those programs are there. Often people don't know about them, and even when they do, we can find ways to fund them in an even better way to continue that change across the state. The second thing is that the treasurer has a board seat on both CalPERS and CalSTRS, which collectively control over $500 billion in pension assets. And that's really important because those pension assets are for our retirees, and they're also important for the future of our state. And we know where the world is going. President Trump may not be going this way, but almost every other nation in the entire world has signed on to the Paris Agreement. So we know that if we can push our portfolio companies to help engender the clean tech revolution that is already underway. Governor Brown is actually having a conference. He's bringing thousands of people to San Francisco this fall for the Global Climate Action Summit.
Which you were involved in, right?
That's right. I helped with the team, helping to set that up. So I would play a key role on those committees. And then the last thing is, as a statewide official, especially as the treasurer, it's your purview, the future of the state's economy. And so much of that will be involved in clean technology. And the governor has set ambitious goals. We're going to get 5 million zero-emission vehicles on the road by 2030. Wow. We're moving toward 50% of electricity generated from renewable sources. So I want to make sure to play my part in pushing forward that energy revolution.
Got it. Our next question is from John. We know him. Hi, John.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on Governor Brown's rainy day fund? How large should it be, and how might California's state income be more diversified?
So on that question, so the rainy day fund now is about, it's several $billion. I think it's about $8 billion, and there will be another deposit this year. And Governor Brown is proposing in his January budget proposal to actually top that off at the constitutionally mandated target of 10% of general fund revenue, which would be about $13 billion. So I support Governor Brown's proposal. There are a lot of nuances in terms of how to go about it. Do you put it directly in the rainy day fund? Do you put it in another fund which has a little bit more discretion? But in either way, we really want that cushion, because the fact is, we saw in 2010 when Governor Brown came in, we were facing a budget deficit of $27 billion. The GDP of California had dropped by single digits, and then that leads to double-digit billions in terms of budget deficits. So it's really important to put that money away, and a rainy day fund won't solve everything, and that's why the second point that John made is so important. We want to have that cushion, but that cushion will never be enough to take away the boom and bust of recessions. So we have to find a way to diversify our state revenue, where right now 70% of it comes from the income tax, and 35% of it, so half of all income tax revenue, comes from the top 1%. And that's a good thing. We're a progressive state. The wealthiest people in the state should be paying their fair share. But we also want to make sure that when that capital gains revenue drops, we have a more stable base of sales and property taxes to smooth out that revenue. So I would propose extending the tax into the 21st century, the sales tax, so that it includes some high-end government services. And that makes sure that no matter what happens in Washington, no matter how our economy does, we have that base that protects our kids, our healthcare, our housing, and our teachers.
Right. Your friend Greg says, full disclosure, I know you, but I've never asked you this, and I'm curious. You had a lot of different career paths you could have taken. Why run for office? It's not an easy thing to do, especially when you're literally running 500 miles. Although actually we calculated at this rate, it might be 650 miles.
That's not good. In that case, we're barely at the halfway mark. Well, first of all, the running, so the running is, as someone mentioned, it is painful sometimes, but I really enjoy it. There's nothing like it. And this really, of course, every candidate is going to say this about their state, but this really is a marvelous state. We really have everything here. And it's been incredible to see it. And then once we go over these mountains, we're going to be in Los Angeles and we're going to hug the coast and get our way down to San Diego. So that's been amazing. And, the fact is for me, I'm a son of immigrants from India, and just growing up, I always loved policy and politics. It was amazing to me that you could come to this country, be a kid of immigrants, and then yet you get to play your part. You learn about American history and play your part in writing the next chapter of that story. And so I had worked on the Hillary Clinton campaign, and my plan and dream was to join her administration there in DC, and I'd worked on her college affordability plan. After the primary, we took the best elements from her plan and from Senator Bernie Sanders' plan, which had gotten a lot of support and put some really important ideas into the debate, and we put them together and had a plan for the Democratic Party that would have been amazing. We all know what happened. It was so tragic that night, November 8th, and we never got to put those into practice. But I've seen here at the state level in California, working on Governor Brown's team and working with an incredible group of colleagues, just how much a state like California can do to not only resist against what's happening in DC, but to keep moving these key priorities that I worked on and that we all care about forward. And the treasurer is a key role for that, because that's a place where you can push the dual priorities of being both fiscally strong and pushing a bold progressive agenda. So I thought this is an open seat. I'd worked at the national level, worked at the state level, and this would be an incredible way to keep moving things forward. I also wanted to show that a candidate like me, who has the requisite experience, but is not raising corporate money or not raising political action committee money, can still do well. And I think this year, because people are finally recognizing just how much their vote matters and just why it's so important to show up at the polls, that this argument can actually gain traction. And then hopefully I'll do well, and that'll make it easier for the next candidate to run that way. And then when we rebuild trust in our government, then a lot of these priorities that are within reach, but we haven't got them yet, universal pre-K, free tuition college, universal health care, creating more jobs, that'll all be possible for the next government.
Yeah, and that really resonates with me as well, because as you know, I'm the child of immigrants as well, and it's amazing when, my family comes from Vietnam and Cambodia, and so in those countries, it's not that you have a voice, that, an average person can't just do what you're doing.
Exactly.
So it's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Next question is from Melissa. Do you support sub-minimum wage, or would you rather support diminishing the sub-minimum wage in the state of California, requiring employers to pay their employees with developmental disabilities the same minimum wage as able-bodied and typical-bodied workers?
So I remember working on this question on the Hillary Clinton campaign, and the fact is that Hillary Clinton called for an end to the sub-minimum wage, because whatever arguments that you can make for it, in theory, about how this will help employ more people with disabilities, in practice too often, and it's tragic, we've seen it being used to exploit people with disabilities and making sure that they're doing the work but barely getting paid what other people are getting paid for creating the same value. The fact is, we know what we need to do to create competitive integrated employment opportunities for people with disabilities. And we've seen things like Project Search and different initiatives all around the country that are helping people with disabilities get great jobs and live in their communities. So I think there's so much that we need to do. I think the sub-minimum wage is a vestige of the past, and we need to do away with it and pursue some of these other, not only more promising, but more moral and ethical approaches.
Right. A question from Sarah, a CSU Fresno alum.
Yes.
Governor Brown proposed a 3% increase in budget for the CSU system. Given the significant cuts during the recession, do you think that bump is adequate?
So I think more funds are always good. I would like to do even more. I think what the governor is recognizing is right now funds do seem constrained because we're putting funds away in the rainy day fund. We're trying to make community college the first year of tuition free. So part of the question for the next government is, how do we get the revenue available to do this? Because we all know, the answer to that question is yes, 3% is not enough.
Right.
And universities can do more to streamline their costs and do more with less. I think the governor has been very good at pushing some of those solutions. But at the same time, we've seen that CSU and UC funding has not grown in line with the rest of the budget. So we have to find ways of getting more money in there. And one of the things I want to do as a candidate for treasurer is make sure that we are updating our tax system, whether it's sales tax for services, whether it's a split roll for making sure that businesses are paying their fair share, whether it's an estate tax, which we used to have before in California on estates of several $1 million, and making sure we put that money back into college savings accounts, whether it's getting rid of the mortgage interest deduction for second homes to help people find their first home. We need more revenue, because I think otherwise the question that Sarah and others raise is such an important question, but it'll never get an adequate answer until we're not only spending our money more effectively, as the governor has said we should, but also finding ways to put more money into the system.
Right. The next question is from Christina. A lot of money is being pumped into the high-speed rail. My husband is a high school teacher, and there's always a need for newer books. Wouldn't that money be better spent on our kids that will be our future?
So that is a good question. And I think it is, when money seems so tight, you feel these trade-offs very acutely. And we do need more books and school supplies and everything in school. That being said, we are here in the Central Valley, and we actually passed by some of the construction zones for the high-speed rail. So it's creating good paying jobs here. It's already being built out. And, these projects often run into issues. They take a long time. And we've certainly seen that with the high-speed rail. And I think it's a fair question when voters ask, well, where is this money going? Right. But my view is this is a really important part for the future of the state. The fact is, when you're statewide, thinking about this issue statewide, you have to think, we have all these different economic centers in California. How do we make sure that they're all connected? And if we can connect the different parts of the state, it will be unstoppable. It'll make San Francisco do better. It'll make LA do better. It'll also make Fresno, Madera, Merced, and Bakersfield do better. So I know it can be frustrating when we see all these delays. We wonder where this money's going. And certainly that program can be run more efficiently. I was very excited to see that Brian Kelly, the former Secretary of Transportation for Governor Brown, has been appointed CEO of the High Speed Rail Authority. He's one of the best people I worked with in government. And if anyone can go in and help fix some of the issues that have been created, it's him. But I don't think we can give up on this project just yet, because I think it's too important for the future of the state. We've already put an amount of money in, but it's not the fact that we put this money in now. It's what will happen if we continue to invest and we do it the right way. So the short answer to that question is, we need books, we need high-speed rail, and we should find a way to do both.
So I want to circle back to this question about your run from Hannah. What's the thing or things that you've seen or heard on your 500, now 650 mile run that surprised you the most?
Well, the first thing is just, I've never, it's rare, I guess some people on their bikes, but to cross through all these neighborhoods on foot, you see how quickly things change. And you can move from an urban center to rural fields, to an almond farm, to people working and getting oranges, to a high-speed rail construction site, the biggest infrastructure project in the United States. To a city like Fresno, which is the 5th biggest city, to Bakersfield, where we are now, the 9th biggest city, and then we're up in the mountains where I didn't see a soul. So I think that's been one part of just seeing how vast it is, how quickly things change. I think the second thing is meeting the people over here. And, I hadn't, before this job, before running for office, spent as much time in the Central Valley as I would have liked. So it was one of the reasons why it was so important for me to get here, and hearing what's on people's minds, the specific challenges that people face here, whether it's the quality of the air that we're breathing, access for people with disabilities, water quality, water access. It's so important, and where future jobs and housing are going to come from. So hearing those and thinking about how the state can solve them has been such a big issue for mine. And then the third and most important thing, and this can seem psychological, but it's just, a lot of people come to me and say, I'm glad you're not ignoring us, because we know the Central Valley here, it's more than 6 million people. So it's a big part of the state. It may not have the financial clout of Los Angeles or San Diego or San Francisco or Sacramento, but there's so many people here and there's so many stories of hope that I know we've done a lot of work talking with people, trying to lift them up. So I want to continue to do that through the rest of my campaign.
Yeah, and just on a personal note, I have felt so privileged to be able to follow you on this run because, I mean, it has been beautiful, has been everything you said, and I'm just totally taken aback by what I've seen. And then I think this will be our last question with 325, but a question from Caleb. How do you think we should use our resources to prepare Californians for the jobs of the future?
So that is probably the most important question. When you think about a lot of the anxiety that we've seen in politics these days, I mean, a lot of it is coming directly from who's in the White House and wondering what's going to happen this week. But a lot of it, I remember Bill Clinton used to say, we always focus on the headlines, but you have to look at the trend lines. And the trend lines are people are moving from job to job more quickly, that college degrees, that's not the end of your learning. In fact, it's just the beginning of your learning. So we want to make sure that people are prepared for the jobs of the future. And the fact is, in California, we have so many advantages. We have, our educated workforce. We have some of the finest public universities in the world. We have this booming technology sector. We have more venture capital, more patents than any other state. But we also have a lot of challenges, and some of them are related to housing that we talked about, K-12 education. But some of it is just this sense of, are people being left behind? And one thing that has animated me from the beginning is politics is not about what's in it for me, right? It's about the common good. And I remember learning in college, and it stayed with me ever since, when politics goes well, we can achieve a good in common that we cannot know alone. So I think a key challenge for all of us is making sure that everybody has access, whether it's community college, whether it's credentialing, whether it's online courses, four-year college, people who have been in these colleges and gotten their degrees, but still need to do more. And then, talking about the millions of people with student debt who are wondering how they deal with this debt, and that burden is weighing on them when they're trying to take the next step. So I think a key role for the treasurer is mapping out that economic future, thinking carefully and for that long term, for those trend lines, about what the meaning of automation is, what changes in education mean for the future workforce, and then how to make sure that the solutions to those problems are in every community, including places like the Central Valley where we are right now. So I was on the front lines of thinking about that for the Clinton campaign, but the fact is, for all the attention in White House and Washington, and it's deserved because we have to worry a lot about what's going on over there, so many of the solutions are right here in our backyard. So that's where I'm going to start.
And that reminds me of Mitch, who we met in the Central Valley, who went back to school in his 50s and had to learn a new skill. And so it's very much what you're speaking about.
Exactly. And he talked about how it's not easy, but he felt he could be a role model to others. And if we can create those stories in every community, that's when we're really going to thrive.
Okay, I lied, because there's one more question that I think is a really important question to get to, but from Ganesh. As you have been involved directly with mainstream politics, what do you think is more important for a politician? Is it sticking to their political party's policies and agendas, or putting people first?
So definitely putting people first is the most important thing, because whether it's in business, in family, in politics, the most important issue, people have to trust you, right? They want you to be smart. They want you to be competent. They want you to be energetic, but they have to trust you. And they'll only trust you if they know that you're not just in it for yourself, but you're in it for them. And the fact is, if they trust you and if you spend time doing the right thing, then the politics will take care of itself and the political party will come behind you. And we've seen that in our history. Political parties are not static. They change over time. They change in relation to the candidates who run and in relation to the preferences of the voters. And, we've seen that on issue after issue. So the most important thing is you listen to the people. It doesn't mean you always agree with every single person you listen to, but you give them a fair shake. You hear what's on their minds, because no one politician, no matter how experienced they are, knows what another person knows. And once you do that, you come up with your policies. You stay firm with your convictions, but also part of listening means changing your mind when you learn something new. And certainly we've all learned things here in the Central Valley that will inform what we do going forward. So once you put people first, I think when people see that in their politicians, we will rebuild that trust and then build the future that we really want here in California.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect way to wrap up, but thank you so much for everyone to tuning into this Facebook Live Town Hall on your Saturday afternoon. We'll follow up with your questions personally or queue them up for the next Facebook Live for the people that we haven't gotten to. And we'll try to do this about every 2 weeks so that we can always get a pulse of what you guys are thinking about.
Great. Thank you so much, Annie. And thank you to all of you.
No.